Welcome to the New Dentist Study Club podcast. My name is Dr. Sanj Mohanta. Listen in to learn about clinical tips, practice management, and also emotional management so you can become a better and happier dentist. Let's go. Welcome to the first
I feel like I'm
episode
sitting on a bus.
New Dentist Study Club. My name is Dr. Sanj Mohanta, and I'm here with the legendary Dr. Bruce Freeman, who did a great presentation for the club in person in Toronto in September on communication and stress management. So we're here to learn about Bruce and for him to give us some tips on how to be better communicators and to decrease stress in our life. So Bruce, when I was a new grad.
Yes, and when I was a new grad, you were a fetus. Yeah, so yeah, go on.
I didn't really like it that much.
Yeah.
I was worried about debt.
Yeah.
Didn't like the money aspect of it all. My philosophy wasn't in line with the practice owners, and I wanted to quit. But luckily, I found my path into public health. And now I'm very happy being a dentist. So how about you, Bruce? What was it like for you as a new dentist?
When you're at that age, you're very impressionable. So if somebody you respect comes up to you and says, you should be a prosthodontist, you're like, oh, okay, I'll become a prosthodontist. And that almost happened because Dr. Zarb said, you should become a prosthodontist. And I was like, I don't really think I want to be a prosthodontist. The idea of packing cord around 20 teeth and seeing blood come under, I was like, I don't think I could do this. So I like the aesthetics and I like the sort of cleanliness of ortho. And I also, didn't know that maybe that was a little imposter-ness going on or whatever, judging myself that I didn't think I could do something surgical or I didn't think I could do something more involved like pros. And I think I just liked the cleanliness and sort of the aesthetic aspect of ortho. So that's how I ended up in that. And then when I was doing my master's, I was doing it with somebody who, was transitioning in their career and it was going nowhere. And I literally, because there was no internet, I slipped a note under the door saying, I don't think this is working out. So I broke up via note.
Like sliding into someone's DM.
Yes, back in the day, we slid a note under the door. Yeah, that was pretty. Yeah. No, think about that. It was analog, analog breakup. So I said, it's not you, it's me, it's not working out. And then I had to find another master's, and that's how I fell ass backward into facial pain. And then I did my master's. I was working part-time, and the rest is kind of history on that front.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. It just kind of came back when you asked me the question. I was like, oh, yeah.
And then how about as a new dentist, new orthodontist, what were your struggles?
I think it was very, there's always the politics. I also became a yoga instructor, and I was talking to someone I trained with, and she said, yoga instructors can be tough. You give up a prime spot or you miss one day, they swoop in, And I thought, well, that's not very yogi-like. So she says, look, there's work politics, there's work politics. So I think I struggled with that. I struggled with having a bigger office. I didn't think I could do it, having tons of staff and seeing tons of patients. I just didn't think that was going to be for me. And I remember somebody called me, they were supposed to sub for the day in office, and she was having some, personal issues. And she's like, could you go in? I'm like, yeah, sure. And it was this fancy office downtown, and there was all these hygienists, and I put on my shirt and tie. And I remember after about an hour, I scratched my back and it was soaking wet. I was sweating bullets. And I thought, yeah, no, it's I cannot do this. This is not for me. So I thought, I need something small, something compact. And I had some bumps in the road and, some ups and downs in terms of, sorry, I think I'm cutting off the screen. But this is very lo-fi how we're doing this. So you may just want to listen to it and not watch. So then I ended up associating, and then that kind of didn't work out. And you have to realize, I was listening to a meditation, and this yoga instructor from Australia said, she said, don't always look at everything in front of you as a conflict or as a roadblock. It's just terrain, and that's the road in front of you. And, just like, when you came here, you missed one street. What did you do? You circled around and you showed up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So instead of hitting the roadblock and crying, oh, what am I going to do? There's a great quote, and I don't know if it was Edison or Einstein. It's like crying is all well and good in the moment, but eventually you got to get like back in the car and figure out where the hell you're going. So that's what, your career is never what you think it's going to be.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
and be excited by that instead of going, oh crap, trying to lay it all out. You're going to get married, you're going to have 2.2 kids, you're going to live in the suburbs, you're going to have a practice, you're going to sell your practice, you're going to retire to Florida. People get these like narratives in their head, this elevator music. And at the end of the day, A, that's kind of boring. And B, that's not always how it ends up. So you're going to have some struggles, and that's where you look for mentors and such. But I think you have to recognize that it's not a linear path, and nothing is. And that's like dentistry. You're drilling away or you're doing treatment, and all of a sudden, blood splurting out, or patients crying out in pain. You're like, well, I didn't expect that. What are you supposed to do? You're not going to throw up your hands and stop.
Yeah.
You got to just plow through. So I think never seeing, anything is the end. And one of the things you said, in one of your questions was, I'll bring it up now, was, what would you tell somebody? And it's just because you do a bad class 2 doesn't mean you're a crap dentist. Are we allowed to swear on this?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Go for it.
So it doesn't mean you're a shit dentist, so it just means you maybe didn't do the best class 2 that day, and figure it out, fix it, remediate it, making sure you're not leaving the patient in a bad situation, but learn from your mistakes and go, yeah, that's not my best work. What happened? And everybody has bad days. Just be happy you're not doing heart transplants or something, because your bad days, the shade was a quarter off is one thing. You missed that artery, it's a whole nother bag of chips there. So yeah.
I like how you knew yourself, that you're like,
Yeah.
no, a smaller practice is right for me.
Yeah.
And instead of being anxious about your future, you're like, I'm going to love the future, no matter how it's going to turn out.
Oh, I was still anxious, don't get me wrong. Yeah. Everybody's sitting there going, oh yeah.
All figured out.
Yeah, it's all figured out. Yeah, no, of course I was anxious. I had 2 ulcers, so obviously there
But
was
you
anxiety.
learn from that. So-
Yeah, well, you
so-
have to be aware of yourself, and if you're not, you're screwed. So it's that self-awareness. There's a great book on dating. Actually, I just gave it to somebody again. It's called Attached. And it talks about all the different dating styles. And it's not telling you to change yourself, it's telling you to be aware of yourself. Because it's just that awareness. And my favorite line is, the only thing you can change on another human being is their diaper. So, Sandra, we keep cutting you out of the screen. You got to scooch in. There you go. Okay. So, that's something you have to be aware of, and having that, understanding that you're not going to be good at everything. Sorry, not anything. I remember one time I was on an interview committee, and I said, what procedures do you struggle with? You wish you just never had to do again. And this person said, oh, I don't have that sort of problem with any procedure. And I'm like, crossing their name off the list. I'm like, lacks awareness. They still ended up becoming whatever they wanted to become. But at the time, I was just like, not a green flag. That's a red flag,
But one of the reasons why I invited you on the podcast is because you're such a kind person. We were at the Ontario Dental Association's New Dentist Symposium, and there was another speaker who was talking about how her father was ill, and you whispered to her, hey, if you want to talk about it, I'm going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And even with your your residents at Mount Sinai, they come to you when you're struggling.
I
So
think
what advice do you?
I think they see me as the benevolent, I'll say older brother. I don't want to say parent. That's, in the sense that I'll be honest with them. I'll say that was stupid, or like, why the hell did you do that? Or, this is great, or why don't you just consider this? So I think it's that they know I have their back, but it's also brutal honesty, sometimes too brutal. And not everybody, I think, is, there's a great quote from Downton Abbey. I don't know if you've ever watched it. The dowager, countess, I think her name was, and somebody, there was a scene where the character said, I'd like to think I'm always nice. And she said, nobody's always nice. And I thought, we all have our moments, and I'm sure some people would disagree, but, I try my best, as we all do. So I think you just have to realize everybody's going through something, and don't take it personally. If a patient's upset, chances are, they found something out about their kid that morning, or they had a fight with their partner, or, the water heater broke, and, but we're all sort of, generationally, as the younger generations come along, everybody's trained to think, oh, it's all me, it's me. And it's no offense. No, it's not, like, you're great and all, but Like when kids would say, I can't have braces on my teeth. What will people say when they see me? I said, they're looking at their phones. They're looking at you. Get over it. And sometimes that sort of toughness is not for everybody, and you have to learn, and I've learned that you can't give it this, that sort of feedback the same way, but feedback has to be benevolent, and you also have to receive it with grace. And it's not always easy. It stings. And sometimes you'll get the instructor and say, like, right in front of the patient, you're in third year, and says, that's one crap, margin. And you're like, oh, hey, okay. And then you look at the patient, well, by crap, he meant, wow, it's a dental term. It means really good. What are you supposed to do? Instead of pulling you away from the patient and maybe doing it constructively, that you just ruined your relationship with the patient. So, you just have to sometimes laugh it off and realize no one's dying. And they always say in 5 years, you look back and you think you wouldn't, or if you look forward in 5 years, say, am I going to care about this? Is this going to mean anything to me? If the answer is no, then stop worrying about it.
Good.
Not easy, but you
Yeah.
just have to look and go, seriously, is this really, the end of the world?
I like how you say, is this a hill you want to die on?
Yeah. And also, or say, do you want to have this heart attack? And someone 25 says, I'm going to have a heart attack. Well, you start training yourself, you'll have that heart attack a lot sooner than you think.
And then what do you see is like when with new dentists, they're coming to you with their struggles. What do you find are the common struggles, and what are you think?
Get a good accountant, get a good lawyer, and find a mentor that's not only your professional mentor, but your personal mentor. And sometimes they're not the same.
Okay.
Because sometimes, you were married with young kids. So, I'm a useless mentor for you. You know what I mean? In that regard. So maybe having somebody who's 10, 15 years ahead of you, who is married with 2 kids, finding their way from a personal perspective, how do you handle daycare? How do you handle mom guilt? How do you handle all these things? That person's going to be a bit of a sort of personal/professional mentor, but then in terms of your career, you might have somebody who's, helps you clinically or whatever else. And a lot of people want to be mentors but no, they're not, because nobody asks them.
Yeah.
So you have to know to ask. Find an accountant that doesn't charge you $1 billion. Don't find an accountant that tells you if you're an associate. I had one of my friends was told by an accountant that she was a long-term associate, and he says, you're simply a, how shall I put this? A person who spends time with other people for money. And she said, I'm sorry, you just called me what? And she just stood there, and it was a few years ago, I guess, when that was acceptable behavior. I don't know, but and it's very interesting. Don't let someone bully you. One of the first people I went to for an accountant, he was like, this leg hanging over the chair, and he was like, okay, so here's what you're gonna do. And I was like, yeah, you're not the guy for me. This is wrong. And another specialist I know, this same accountant, said, you're an idiot, you'll never succeed, you shouldn't buy this practice. And she was freaking out, you know what I mean? And she ended up buying the practice, and she's a great success. So just because someone says it doesn't make it true.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And ask around, ask for a good account, who's got a good accountant. And people say, I need a dental accountant, money in, money out. Like people get, dental plumber, yeah, dental electrician, maybe, but a dental accountant, somebody who's familiar with how money comes in and comes out, and what a write-off is. Sometimes people get too fixated on saying, I need this specialist accountant, and sometimes certain professionals try to convince you that you need them when you really don't.
Okay.
So that's something. And also go to therapy. There's
I agree.
Yeah, like go to therapy. There's Mind Beacon, which is free. It's all through texting. There's a million different avenues where you don't have to pay an arm and a leg. And there's even, if you go on Shift Collab, ShiftCollab, and you say you're a student, the rates are far cheaper.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of different, and if you go on Psychology Today, Toronto, Portuguese, let's say you're more comfortable speaking in Portuguese, you'll find a Portuguese therapist.
Oh, wow.
So and I found, patients are shocked, and I say, oh, you speak Cantonese, or you speak this, or you speak Russian or Ukrainian, and I find them a therapist in their language. So they're able to express themselves, and they're less reticent to, you know what I mean, to have difficult, because somebody who's Persian may say, well, I don't think this person gets me. You know what I mean? And they'd be more comfortable. We all have in different languages ways to express things. And so you'll say something in Farsi, you may not say the same in English. And you know what I mean? You're trying to get your point across. And also that person may understand your family a little bit better.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So try and find people who you resonate with, and you're not going to love every therapist. Like dating, you don't marry the first person you date. I mean,
Yeah.
some people do, but all those matchmaking shows on nobody gets married on those on Netflix. They all seem to crash and burn. But anyways, so surround yourself with people who know more than you about what you need them to know about.
Oh, great advice.
And don't be afraid to fire your accountant. Say, you know what, not working out.
Exactly.
And go get other opinions, just like I send patients for second opinions. Go get a second opinion on your accountant, on your lawyer. Ask around, ask people who've had bad experiences. What made their experience bad? What do they consider a good accountant?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So don't be afraid. And everybody's, oh, go to this person because they're the most well-known or they gave a talk. That's not always the right person for you.
Yeah.
That just means they're the most, out there. Doesn't mean they're the right fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also there's the members assistance program, which is free.
Yeah, there's tons of resources, and you're gonna look like dating, you're gonna kiss a lot of frogs in terms of accountants and lawyers,
And associateships.
And associateships. Yeah, like I've had some lousy ones of those too. Yeah.
So you gave our club some great tips on communication.
Yes.
Communication with their patients specifically.
I think there's two things. And one, I was just telling somebody else who had to fire a patient who said somebody found them on one of those things where they pay you to go to the dentist or something.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know let's not name anything, but so anyways, this person showed up. I don't want a cleaning, and the mouth was in bad shape. So I said, well, how did you handle this? I did what you told me. I said, it wouldn't be safe for me to care for you in this situation, and explain the role of bacteria in oral health and systemic health. And I said, for these reasons, I am not comfortable caring for you, and I'm not going to be able to meet your needs. This is why. But, I wish you luck in finding the practitioner. And one of the other ways to deal with something like this is ask for understanding. When let's say people didn't want to take a medication, or they don't want x-rays or whatever, say, instead of going, well, here's the research, moron, like, how do you not know? Because there's something called the backfire effect, where they'll then hang on to that false narrative even more strongly, because they don't want to, they're thinking in their head, wait a minute, am I an idiot? Have I been believing a lie? No, I couldn't be. So I have to be right. So instead of saying, Sanj, I understand you don't want x-rays. I bet you've had lousy conversations with tons of dental people. Can you explain to me how you arrived at that decision? And if you're at all interested, I'm extending the invitation. I'll share with you my thoughts on the subject.
Oh, that's good. It's a conversation, not a conflict.
Exactly. And the other thing is, the other one, because otherwise you introduce the gray cloud. There's a plastic surgeon, facial plastic surgeon, Mike Roskies, and he coined this. I don't know if he stole it from anybody. I'll say he told it to me, so that's fine. I haven't heard anybody try to take ownership. And it's just like, if you're running behind or whatever, the patient's upset, there's already this gray cloud. So no matter how great your clinical work, they're just going to be pissed off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you have to know, even if you have an hour and a half book, say, you know what, you're going to get mad at me, but today's not the day. Because let's fast forward. I do the work today. You're upset. You're not in the right mindset. You're not 100% sure you want to do this. So I'll do the work because, you're pressuring me at this point. And then you're going to come back in a month and say, you shouldn't have done it. You should have stopped. You're the doctor. So I look at patients and go, we're not going to have that conversation.
Oh.
Because I don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation with you where you start blaming me now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do what my responsibility is and do what it is you come to see me for. And I'm going to say, you know what? Flag on the play. We're not doing this today. Yeah. And if they're so pissed off, they want to go somewhere else, bye, let them, because then, they've shown their true colors. It's like, I don't know if you ever traveled with your husband, before you got married, because that's usually, it's like, oh hell, I'm not going. It's like, is that how you behave? No, forget it. So, these are things that you have to think about.
That's good, because then it's not about the patient being right or the dentist being right. It's about doing the right thing.
And nobody's right, because in that hot moment when everybody's freaking out, there's an actual neuroscience thing where you actually don't hear clearly.
Yeah.
And so then you're not going to convince them. They're not going to convince you. So dial it down, take a breath, and have that conversation. And that's why you don't send the emails when you're pissed off, because if you read it the next morning, you're like, oh, good grief, I should never have sent that. Like that was a bad idea, so always take a breath.
So what do you suggest to say when things aren't going well during a procedure?
If things aren't going well with the procedure, call it out. Stick a mirror in the patient's hand and say, this is not what I want to see. Hopefully you had that conversation. I always say, when you tell someone something before the procedure, it's a warning. After, it's an excuse.
Yeah.
So you always can't be afraid and say, hey, here's your decay. Here it is. Here, and review that, not just at the time you decide the treatment, but the day of the treatment.
Okay.
And also say, do you understand? Are you sure? And if they say no, yeah, sometimes you have to blow a hole in your schedule. Great, better than having an angry patient and doing something they're not comfortable with. So you always have to ask for understanding. And that's why I always draw out a tree diagram saying, if we see this on the x-ray, this, and if not, you may have to go get a root canal. Now, I would feel terrible if you weren't sure. Can you teach it back to me? Tell me what you think we're supposed to do here. I just want to make sure we're both on the same page. Because, Dr. Quinones, who's the vice dean, but, runs the dental school at Western, will tell you that in his, he did an article on complaints with the RCDSO, and found that a certain percentage were clinical, a certain percentage were pure communication. But if you look at it, a lot of those clinical ones probably are partially communication based because maybe someone felt they didn't have understanding. Do you know what I mean? So doing that diagram saying, does the plan make sense? And I write in the chart, patient said plan makes sense.
Oh, good.
It's very simple. Do you know what I mean? It's very elegant when you look at it. And I have a way that I do walk through it in my lectures about how you go through the steps of doing a new patient exam. But when I draw it out in that tree diagram, I go, does that make sense? And yeah, sometimes you've just told somebody they have to lose 3 teeth and they're like, what about veneers? Because they're just trying to regain control of their now out of control mouth. So you say, wow, veneers, interesting topic. Let's bring, I'm going to make a note. We'll talk about it at your next appointment.
Oh, great.
This way you're not like rolling your eyes going veneers, like, buddy, you're going to lose half your teeth. There'll be nothing to veneer, because in your head, that's what you're thinking. And also patients they're freaking out. They don't understand. If they knew what you knew, they'd be doing your job. And what do they need you for? So don't get upset when somebody has a lot of questions. Don't get upset if somebody doesn't know. That's why you're there. That's your job. And you're there to care for somebody. And this way you have more control of the narrative and it's less stressful. When you're controlling the conversation, say, hey, do you understand? Yeah. Is the treatment plan make sense to you? Yep. Okay. Good. Patient said, and then give them a copy of your scribblings and scan it into the chart. And I give it to them to take home. They go, oh, I still have that piece of paper here. Because that's the best way to go about it. And this way, you've asked for understanding and they've said they understand. So, then move forward. And if they don't, then you shouldn't be doing the procedure. It's very simple.
And then you had some great tips about like what to say if you're running behind, what to say to the patient.
That's a simple one that I think a lot of people have learned. You just don't say, you just say, thank you for your patience, because you're thanking them for something. If you say, sorry, busy day, they're like, well, screw you. Like that's why I laughed. I was in the hallway at Sinai and I brought this patient in for an emergency. And I said, come at 8, I'll come early for you. But the admin said, look, come at 8:30. You may have to wait a bit. 9:45 showed up. And I'm there, and one of the chief surgeons in the hospital walks behind me as this is happening. And I said, I was here at 8:30. She said, well, I was told I had to wait. And there was traffic. And yeah. So I just looked at her and I go, well, leave early. Like, leave earlier. I was like, I was here. And I just heard like snorting behind me, he thought that was quite funny. But I said it in a way, I was like, I got here, go leave earlier next time. And she laughed. I didn't say it in a really, rude, wagging my finger way. There's a way to get your point across
it's true.
without whacking somebody over the head with it.
Exactly. I like how you used humor.
Yeah, you have to, because it's like, again, is it worth me like getting my shorts in a knot, because she was late? It's like, okay, well, I'm glad you were late and you don't mind waiting, because now you're going to wait a little longer, because I'm not going to kill myself. I'll get to you when I'm not going to shortchange one person. You know what I mean? I'll say, look, I'll get to you as I get to you. You're here.
So humor is a great way to decrease stress. But what are some other ways that you decrease stress?
I think staying off your phone, not doom scrolling in between patients, going outside. I don't care if it's below 0, just inhaling fresh air.
I do that too.
And
Always
it just
mentor watch.
resets your brain, you know what I mean? Because if you start doom scrolling, you're like, oh, my abs don't look like that. Oh, I'll never make a chicken like that. And then you're just like, so now you just feel even worse about yourself. And then you're, bitching to a friend, this happened, this happened, this happened. So you're reliving it again. And then you go back and the lucky patient who gets you next, you're all aggravated and pissy at that point. So that's not very helpful. So I think it's important to breathe fresh air. And look, I'm guilty of doom scrolling just like the next person, but get off your phone. And they say your mind needs to go into that default mode. That's why they say when you're folding the laundry, just be bored. Like it's okay to be bored. Close your eyes for a minute and just breathe. And everybody thinks, meditation has to be 45 minutes or some dead yogi will roll in their grave. And I'm like, no, nobody cares. Just sit in silence for a minute and let the thoughts come to you. And if you feel yourself clenching at that thought, think to yourself, why am I getting so upset about that? That's something I'll park and I'll deal with later.
I do a light cure meditation. So whenever my assistant's
you find the light in your eyes?
Curing light, which is it beeps every 5 seconds. I'll inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. So I'm just taking deep breaths during the light.
And you can do your Kegel exercises at the same time. Because both men and women need to do those exercises. Getting old is easy, it's a blessing, but a curse. So if you're smart and you're listening to this, the other thing is get custom earplugs, which are not expensive. I saw something called Zounds, Zounds. I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there. You do some sort of a mold and you get custom earplugs, because I have tinnitus. I have ringing in my ears. And it's not tinnitus, which is the inflammation of tin. It's tinnitus. And earplugs, stretching routine, and what were we just talking about? What was the other thing?
Kegels and meditation.
Kegels and meditation. This way you won't be stressed and incontinent when you're older. Nobody's going to listen to this podcast now.
Now you put me on to this great Instagram account called Jefferson Fisher.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you're out of the screen there. Yeah, Jefferson Fisher is great. He's a little annoying. He's got great hair, but he ends each thing. He says, follow me if you like me. It's sort of a desperate plea, but I love the guy because he's great. He goes 3 ways to handle the narcissist, 3 ways to handle an upset person, 3 ways to handle this. And he's a trial attorney. And I tell all the residents, listen to this guy. You will get something out of him. He is super smart. And he doesn't need to ask people to follow him. He's got like 2 billion followers or something, and he's coming out with a book, and he's super smart. I can't imagine this guy's ever lost a trial because he is so smooth.
His communication technique
is amazing. No, so he's great. In terms of podcasts, Laurie Santos and the Happiness Lab.
Yes,
she's great. Short bites. Neki Jamal and Akil Chawa in Hello, I'm Doctor are always funny, and they ask tough questions, and they're honest. Like they go, I struggle with this, or this stressed me out. They're not pretending to be something they're not. So they're quite genuine, and I love both those guys. And then they gave me one of my favorite hoodies, so that was great. And who else do I like? James Andrews for orthodontics. He's really good. And there's a bunch of other ones. I just look at them for, interesting technique, interesting this or that. But anybody who says everything works out, everything looks great, I'm amazing, delete them because they're full of it. It's not getting you anywhere. I think those are I wrote down one more. I'm just trying to see if no, those were the ones. Those were the main ones that I talked to.
And of course, there's the Instagram account, Dr. BVF.
Oh, DRBVF is so boring. You're not going to learn anything there. Yeah, I'm at DRBVF. Yeah, follow me. Yeah, probably 2 people will, and they'll unfollow like right after. But I don't post anything that exciting. But if you're bored,
post pictures of great food.
Yes, and I baked for you today.
Yes, so, I can't wait to try it.
So just find stuff and don't be afraid to go, yeah, this isn't serving me, or this is boring. Click next. Constantly refresh. Because otherwise you're not going to listen to somebody and you're not getting anything out of them. Somebody said, like, if you had more time, what would you do? I want to learn more things. I'd like to learn more languages. I'd like to learn how to do a different skill. Like, to me, that's exciting. Like, couldn't you imagine being able to speak every language? You know what I mean? Couldn't you imagine, knowing how to do, you walk into a wedding and you know how to do a waltz, or you go somewhere and all of a sudden you're doing the flamenco. You're like, how the hell do you know how to do that? Just to have skills, know how to do everything would be great. Of course, it's impossible, and that's one of the things, always be hungry. that's why they say sometimes they've done these studies with physicians, and they said the physician out 20, 25 years can tend to sort of develop a groove and not really be developing or growing as much, just because of fatigue or who knows what. But some of the best practitioners to go to, in this case, it was physicians, are 5 to 10 years out because they're still hungry. So I had a patient the other day, and I called the medical office about this patient, one of my pain patients at the hospital. And they said, hello, Dr. So-and-so's office. And I was like, somebody answered the phone. So it threw me off. Like I was waiting to hear press 1, 5, 7, 3, And so the lady on the phone, I said, oh, sorry. And she goes, what? I said, I sort of forgot what I was going to say because I didn't expect anybody to answer the phone. I said, can I speak to Dr. So-and-so about this patient? I'll see if she's with the patient. All of a sudden, 2 seconds. Hi, it's Dr. So-and-so. And I said, and again, I was stumped because I was busy writing something, and all of a sudden this person comes to the phone. I said, wow, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. And she goes, why? I said, not only did your secretary answer the phone, but you came to the phone. I'm like, I don't even know what to say anymore. I sort of lost my train of thought. And so then I hung up, and one of the nurses who's, been in the biz a long time, she's like, she must be one of the young ones, still keen, comes to the phone. Some of these doctors I call, I send 40 letters and leave 10 messages, and I'm still waiting to hear back. Patient's dead now, but thanks for getting back to me. Patient moved, they're in Switzerland, but great, thanks for your help. So yeah.
So thank you so much, Bruce, for sharing your tips. And I'm going to tell you something very interesting about Bruce. Before I came to his house, he moved his car so I could park in his driveway. There was a fresh biscotti and what type of
Olive
cake?
oil cake.
Olive oil cake. And when I rang his doorbell, there was a bark.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have a dog.
I know, but he must have written now everybody's gonna know he doesn't really have a dog. Yeah. Just makes people I don't want at the door think I have a dog.
That address too. So it just shows you how kind he is.
Sometimes. Sometimes I remember to be kind.
And you're very kind to be on this podcast. So thank you very much, Bruce.
And the other little tip I think, I wrote down, and I don't want to leave without saying 2 things. 1, live beneath your means.
Very good.
And things are not going to make you happy. Experiences and having money in the bank so that you're free in the future to not work if you don't want to work is important. So always live beneath your means. Buying a Ferrari is not going to help you.
Like he didn't buy a dog.
No.
He just got the doorbell with
this sounds like a dog. But the thing is, I always say, one of my former residents, he's like, one day I'm going to get a Ferrari. I'm like, no, you're not. I go rent one, drive around a track, get it out of your system, and realize you don't want to buy a Ferrari. And the other thing is the 10,000 hour rule, which is that number was just given to it. It's really by a book called by Poole and Erickson. And it's called Peak, and it's all about purposeful practice. But somebody sort of co-opted it and said 10,000 hours as an arbitrary number. Yeah. You would have to do, let's say you did something 4 hours. Let's say I was a golfer 4 hours a week. And if I wanted 10,000 hours, I would have to do golf I would have to play golf 4 hours a week of 4 hours every week of every month of every year for 52 years. So, the 10,000 hours should be called the 52 year, so just remember, if you're trying to do something, you're not going to be great at everything. Find your lane, find the people you like, that you will make friends after 35, you will make friends after 50, you will find your group, and that group will change with you. Your career is not what you think it's going to be. It will change and morph. And again, live beneath your means and wear earplugs. And that's the most I can give you in this short amount of time.
But don't wear earplugs while you're listening to this podcast.
No, they'll probably switch off long before that, but So yeah, if anybody, like, in all seriousness, Instagram's the best way, and it's D as in Doctor, R as in Robert, B as in Bob, V as in Victor, F as in Frank. If anybody's struggling with something and they don't know where to turn for a resource, or they have a question, that's what it's for. You know what I mean? And so I always give out my Instagram and say, hey, and people reach out and they say, I've had a shit day, or this happened, or, I'm an associate, this is going wrong, or this is struggling with this at home. And there are people at your club, believe it or not, who have reached out and who I've been able to sort of steer in the right direction. And that's what it's about. And so thank you for doing what you do, because it gives people a forum where they're not afraid to ask questions. They can network with each other. They can learn from people who have made way more mistakes than they have yet. And so, kudos to what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And thank you to the audience for listening and watching.
Right, and let them eat cake. Okay, let's go. Let's go have some cake.
Have some cake.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the New Dentist Study Club podcast. Follow us on Instagram at New Dentist Study Club.